On Christmas Day, my parents refused to let my 11-year-old daughter inside their house. They turned her away right at the door. She ended up walking back home alone, carrying every gift she had brought with her, and she spent Christmas sitting in an empty house. When I eventually learned what had happened, I didn't yell or make a scene. Instead, I acted. 5 hours later, the calm they expected in their lives began to fall apart. I arrived home late that Christmas night, assuming the house would be quiet and empty because my daughter was supposed to be spending the evening at my parents' place. They had planned a big dinner, cousins visiting, and a sleepover she had been excited about for days, talking about it like it was the most important event of the year. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The first thing that caught my attention was the smell. Something had burned. Not the kind of burnt smell you get from toast left too long in the toaster, but the heavier scent of someone trying to cook something meaningful and failing. I walked into the kitchen and immediately saw the evidence. A pan sat on the stove with something blackened inside it. On the table was a plate with crumbs scattered around it, as if someone had been moving carefully, trying not to make any noise. Then my eyes landed on something that made my stomach sink completely. Her shoes. Her coat. My 11-year-old daughter was home. "Emma!" called. "Hey," she answered immediately. She was sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing the same clothes she had on when I dropped her off earlier that evening. Her shoulders were drawn in tight, almost like she was trying to make herself smaller in her own home. She wasn't crying or causing a scene. She just looked small and quiet. For a moment, I simply stared at her, trying to force reality to make sense. "You're supposed to be at Grandma and Grandpa's," I said. "I know," she replied, her voice strangely flat, like she had rehearsed it beforehand. "Then why are you here?" I asked, keeping my tone deliberately calm. She blinked slowly before answering. They turned me away." At first, the words didn't register. My mind almost refused to process them. "Turned you away," I repeated. "At the door." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the plate. "They said there wasn't enough space." I stared at her in disbelief. "Space for what?" She looked at me as if the answer were obvious. "For me." That was when I noticed the gifts. Every single one of them had been placed neatly by the front door. The bags stood upright, tags still attached, the tissue paper carefully arranged like she couldn't stand the thought of them looking messy. These were the presents she had been so proud of. The same gifts we had packed up together and taken with her earlier that day. My throat tightened. "Why are the gifts here?" Emma swallowed nervously. They didn't want them." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "They told you to bring them back?" "Yes." She nodded once. I studied her face, forcing myself to stay calm, then asked the question that mattered most. "Why didn't you call me?" Her eyes dropped to the table. "My phone died," she said quietly. "I asked Grandma if I could use theirs. Like the house phone." I already suspected the answer, but I asked anyway. "She said no," Emma whispered, her voice cracking at the last word. "She said it would just make things harder. And you were busy." "Busy," I repeated. "And then Grandpa said I should just walk home," she added softly, as if it were the most ordinary suggestion in the world. "Because it's not far." I stared at her, stunned. It isn't far if you're an adult who knows the neighborhood. It isn't far when you're not carrying bags that cut into your hands. And it definitely isn't far when you're not an 11-year-old walking alone on Christmas night, passing houses filled with families celebrating inside. "How long did you walk?" I asked. "Maybe 20 minutes, she said quietly. At first I wasn't sure which direction to go because we always drive. Something sharp settled under my ribs and stayed there. I glanced at the burnt pan on the stove, then at the plate in front of her. "And this?" asked gently. "You tried to cook something." Her cheeks turned red like she had been caught doing something wrong. "I got hungry," she murmured. "And I wanted to, I don't know, make it feel like Christmas." Those words hit harder than anything else. "I watched a video," she added quickly. "I tried. It just burned." She pointed toward the pan. "It's fine." I opened the window to let the smell out. The fact that she was trying to comfort me, as if she were the problem, made my chest ache. I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "Start from the beginning," I said softly. She took a shaky breath. "After you dropped me off, I went up to the door right away, just like you said." He nodded. "Grandma opened the door," Emma continued, her eyes drifting away. "And she looked surprised. Like she forgot I was coming." My jaw tightened. Then Aunt Dana said, "Oh. Emma's mouth twisted slightly. "And Grandma said the house was full. She said there weren't enough chairs." "What about the cousins?" I asked, already bracing myself. "They were inside," she said quietly. "They could see me." She swallowed hard before continuing. "Logan laughed and said my dress looked like a curtain." The word curtain came out bitter. "And nobody stopped him." I asked carefully. Emma shook her head. Grandpa said, "Let's not start drama." I exhaled slowly through my nose. Sometimes dry humor is the only response when anger becomes too big to hold. "Right," I muttered. "Because letting an 11-year-old come inside would have caused such a scene." Emma gave a small, miserable half-smile that disappeared almost immediately. "I tried to give Grandma her gift," she whispered. "The one I made." My eyes snapped toward her. "The ornament." She nodded. Tears finally slipped down her cheeks, like her face had grown too tired to keep pretending. "I put her name on it," she said. "But she didn't even touch it. She just said, 'Not now.'" A sob escaped her suddenly, like a hiccup she couldn't stop. She turned her face away quickly, embarrassed by her own emotions, as if she were the one doing something wrong. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. She leaned into me immediately, as if the only thing keeping her upright before had been stubborn determination. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my sweater. "No," I said firmly. "You don't apologize for this." She sniffed. "I ruined Christmas." "You didn't ruin anything," I told her. "They did." She wiped her face with her sleeve and stared down at the plate again. "I tried," she murmured. "I really tried." And that single sentence held the entire heartbreak of the night. She had tried to create Christmas for herself in an empty house because the people who were supposed to love her decided she didn't deserve a seat at their table. I didn't scream. I didn't call my mother to start a fight over the phone. Emma didn't need to hear that. She didn't need to think she had started a war between us. So I swallowed the anger and kept it inside. Every harsh remark echoed in the room. I pulled Emma a little closer to me, and inside my mind something quietly locked into place. I didn't cause a scene or raise my voice. Instead, I chose to act. 5 hours later, their world began to crumble. I wish I could say my parents became this way overnight. It would almost be comforting, as if they had caught some strange illness called entitlement and suddenly woke up unable to recognize their own granddaughter. But the truth is, this behavior wasn't new. It had always existed. It had simply grown bold enough to reveal itself openly. My sister Dana had always been the favorite. Not in that gentle, parents love each child differently kind of way, no. It was the obvious kind, like a public scoreboard stuck to the refrigerator. Dana was older, louder, and easier for them to handle. She was the child they had hoped for. I was the one who arrived later, like an unexpected bill nobody wanted to pay. When I was young, my mother often said things like, "You're so much work," in the same tone someone might use when complaining that a suitcase is too heavy. It wasn't cruel in a dramatic way. Worse than that, it was casual, like it was simply a fact of life. As if needing care was some kind of personal defect. By the time I was old enough to recognize tone, I already understood that, in their eyes, I was a burden. Then I got pregnant, young and completely unplanned. The father barely qualified as present for the moments when an actual human being was required. He stayed around just long enough to make promises before disappearing like smoke. I never walked into my parents' house asking them to finance my life. I didn't have the strength for that. I was too busy being terrified. Yet they treated me as if I had already handed them a bill. My father's first reaction was, "So what? We're supposed to pay for this." My mother's response was, "You're ruining this family," as though my pregnancy had personally set fire to their curtains. They bought me a onesie once, just one. My mother held it up proudly, as if she had funded an entire charity. "See," she told relatives. "We help her." After that, she returned to her normal life. Dana, of course, played the role of the concerned sister. She would appear with plenty of advice and vanish the moment real effort was required. She cried when it made her look compassionate and spoke about sacrifices she never actually made. I moved out. I raised Emma by myself. College had to wait. I took an office job because I needed reliable hours and a paycheck that wouldn't bounce. Whenever possible, I attended evening classes, the kind where dinner comes from a plastic container eaten in your car while pretending that's normal. It wasn't glamorous. It was survival. And honestly, survival suited me far better than begging. The one person who never treated me like a mistake was my grandmother, Ruth. She never questioned why I hadn't been more careful. She never demanded that I apologize for needing help. She simply showed up however she could. Grandma wasn't perfect. She was blunt and hilariously frugal. Once she told me, "If you pay full price for something, you deserve whatever happens next," as if it were a universal moral rule. But she was love in a family that treated love like it was in limited supply. As the years passed, her legs began to fail her. Pain, weakness, the kind that turned short distances into steep mountains. Her mind was still sharp, and she could still roast someone with a single sentence, but moving around became difficult. My parents treated it like an inconvenience. They would call to check in and then brag about it. They visited once a month, snapped a photo, and posted it online with captions like, "Family is everything." Then they left and didn't return. Dana behaved the same way. If Grandma was simply a person, Dana barely remembered she existed. But if Grandma represented an inheritance, Dana suddenly cared very deeply. I was the one driving her to appointments, bringing groceries, and learning how to help her stand safely so she wouldn't fall. Eventually, I even took a short caregiving course because I was tired of guessing when it came to someone I loved. It saved money, made me useful, and, most importantly, helped Grandma feel less helpless. The more time I spent with her, the more I noticed something uncomfortable. My parents treated her exactly the way they treated me, like a burden, a chore, something to tolerate until they could return to their real lives. Meanwhile, Grandma quietly helped them financially, the same quiet way she handled everything. No announcements, no bragging. At some point, my parents moved into a house everyone in the family referred to as the house Grandma gave them. The phrase became almost sacred. Grandma gave them the house. Grandma gifted it. Grandma wanted them to have more room for family. Before long, my parents talked about it like the house belonged to them by divine right. And once they had it, they visited Grandma even less. It was almost impressive how quickly they treated generosity like a completed transaction, like once she had given them something, she had no further value. Grandma, meanwhile, chose to live in a small rental. She said it was easier, less cleaning, fewer worries. She didn't want a big place to manage alone. She preferred comfort over attention. That's why Christmas mattered so much. This year, Grandma couldn't attend the big celebration. Her legs were worse, and the thought of stairs, noise, and crowds was too much. My parents didn't offer to visit her. They didn't suggest bringing dinner. They didn't even think about video calling until I mentioned it. So I chose to spend time with her. At the same time, I let Emma enjoy the big family Christmas she had been dreaming about. My parents' house was always beautifully decorated and organized, the kind of place kids loved. There were friends, games, cookies, and cousin sleepovers that felt like a rite of passage. Emma poured her heart into those gifts. She saved money, made things herself, and worried about whether everyone would like them. She was proud. She didn't mind that I wasn't coming, because to her it was still family. That's what made it so devastating when they told her she should celebrate somewhere else. Apparently there weren't enough chairs. Not enough space. No room for her. While they sat at their table enjoying their perfect Christmas, they had no idea that everything around them was already beginning to unravel. That night I had two priorities: help my daughter find herself again and make sure my parents couldn't cause any more harm while she was still hurting inside. Emma didn't react dramatically. That was the problem. She moved around our kitchen quietly, as if she were trying not to disturb the air, as if she didn't deserve to take up space in her own home. I didn't scold her about the stove or point at the burnt pan like evidence proving she shouldn't cook alone. Safety could wait. Tonight, the real emergency was shame. So I did what mothers often do when they cannot find the right words. I made hot chocolate and acted as if I wasn't furious enough to chew straight through the drywall. I added extra marshmallows, because a moment of trauma is not exactly the time to start practicing moderation. Emma sat quietly at the table, holding her mug between her hands as if it were the last warm thing left in the world. Every few minutes her eyes drifted toward the gifts lined neatly beside the door, still wrapped perfectly, still unwanted. I kept catching myself thinking that I should drive over there. I should knock on their door. I should make them say everything to my face. But then I would look at my daughter's shoulders, how tense they were, how small she had made herself, and I swallowed the anger. I wasn't about to turn her night into the background noise of a screaming argument. Then my phone buzzed. It was Grandma Ruth. It wasn't the kind of long, chatty call some relatives make. Grandma Ruth never did long conversations unless she was handing out advice nobody had asked for. Her calls were quick check-ins, practical and efficient. I answered and put the phone on speaker because my hands were busy, and also because Emma's entire face lit up the moment she heard the ringtone. "Hey, Grandma. Put me where I can see you," she said immediately. "No hello." Grandma never wasted time on greetings when she could be direct with her love. So I switched to video. Her face appeared on the screen, glasses perched on her nose, wearing the expression she always had when she was about to correct someone's pronunciation. Emma leaned closer to the phone as if it were a window. "Merry Christmas, Great-Grandma," she said, trying so hard to sound normal that it made my throat tighten. Grandma's face softened. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." Emma smiled. It lasted only half a second. Then it trembled, and the tears came anyway. Quiet, stubborn tears she clearly didn't want anyone to see. But Grandma noticed. Grandma always noticed. "What happened?" she asked, calm but sharp, as if her mind had already begun fitting the pieces together. Emma glanced at me with that familiar kid panic. "Don't get anyone in trouble." But the truth doesn't stay locked away forever, and it finally slipped out. "They wouldn't let me in," she whispered. Grandma's expression froze. "Who?" "Grandma and Grandpa," Emma said, her voice cracking. "They said there wasn't space. And they didn't take the gifts." Grandma blinked slowly, the kind of careful blink that means she is choosing her next words very, very carefully so she doesn't say something that ends with arson. Emma wiped her face quickly. "I tried to use their phone," she added, as if she needed to defend herself. "Mine had died. I asked, they said no." Grandma's mouth tightened. "And you walked home?" she asked. Emma nodded. "Grandpa said it wasn't far." Grandma didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She looked directly at my daughter through the screen and said, "Sweetheart, listen to me. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing." Emma made a small sound like she wanted to curl up inside those words and stay there. Grandma continued. "You were polite. You brought gifts. You showed up. If anyone should feel ashamed, it's the people who turned a child away at their own door." Emma's chin trembled. I pulled her closer with my arm, and she leaned against me like she had been holding herself upright with pride alone. Grandma's gaze shifted to me. "Kate." "Yes," I replied, already bracing myself. Her voice sharpened. "I gave them that house so they would have room for family." Room for family. I didn't interrupt. I didn't guide the conversation or suggest anything. I simply sat there holding my child and let Grandma connect the dots herself. Grandma's eyes narrowed. "And they used that space to turn my great-grandchild away." My stomach dropped. When Grandma became quiet like that, consequences usually followed. I won't allow it, she said. Grandma. I began automatically, because I had no intention of striking a match next to gasoline. No, she cut in. My legs may hurt, but that's all. My brain still works. I know, I said softly. Her voice became even calmer. I'm going to undo it. Blink. Undo what? The house, she replied. I stared at the screen. Grandma. You can't just ungift a house. Her lips twitched slightly. You'd be surprised what can happen when people don't bother reading the paperwork. Sounded like a riddle. It also sounded like a promise. Emma sniffed and wiped her face again, trying to pull herself together after being made to feel like she didn't deserve a seat at the table. Grandma's voice softened when she looked at her again. Finish your cocoa, she said gently. Next Christmas, you'll be exactly where you belong. Emma nodded, small and careful. A minute later we ended the call. Grandma told Emma she loved her. She also told me to lock my doors. Grandma never missed a chance to act as if the world was crawling with criminals, including my own parents. After that, I focused on what mattered most. Getting my daughter through the night without letting shame harden inside her like concrete. We watched a movie and huddled under a blanket. Emma fell asleep in that exhausted way kids do when they've held themselves together too long. Then, just before midnight, before my brain could fully process Grandma's paperwork remark, my phone rang again. Mom answered. She didn't even pause to inhale. What did you do? Mo. Hello. Mo. Is Emma okay? Her voice was pure panic and fury. I held the phone away from my ear. What are you talking about? Don't play stupid, she snapped. Grandma called us on Christmas. She's claiming the house isn't ours and that we have to move out. My stomach plummeted. What? I asked, genuinely stunned. You think this is funny, she shrieked. While everyone was celebrating, you went over there to poison her against us. I didn't, I said. You're a snake, she spat. You've always been jealous. You've always wanted what we have. I stared at the dark kitchen, at the burnt pan, at the gifts arranged like silent witnesses. I don't know what Grandma told you, I said carefully, but I didn't plan anything. I didn't even know. Oh, please, my mother snapped. You've been circling her like a vulture. Something inside me went cold and sharp. My daughter came home tonight, I said softly. She was turned away at your door. She walked home alone with gifts you refused to take. There was a pause, a half-second silence, where I could almost hear her mind searching for a way to dismiss it. Then she hissed, "Don't change topics." Of course. You excluded a child, I said. On Christmas. We didn't have enough chairs, she snapped. And she was fine. You're raising her to be dramatic, just like you. She stood outside your door, I said, controlling every word. And you wouldn't even let her use your phone. My mother's voice rose. You should have kept her with you then. You're the one who abandoned her. The audacity was almost impressive. Then she said it, as if it had been perched on her tongue for years, waiting for the right moment. We should have excluded you a long time ago. Like Emma's Christmas was mere collateral damage in a bigger scheme to punish me for existing. You're not going to rewrite what you did, I said quietly. My mother laughed, sharp and ugly. You think you've won. You think Grandma is stable. Then, in a voice that made my skin crawl, she added, "We'll handle her." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone as if it had transformed into a wild animal. Grandma had threatened to undo something. My mother was terrifying. My daughter was asleep down the hall, tear tracks faint on her face, and I still couldn't comprehend how any of this was possible. Only that something had started moving, and my parents were already trying to grab the wheel. The next morning I called Grandma Ruth. No answer. Called again. Nothing. That alone didn't send me spiraling. Immediately. Grandma was many things, but tech-savvy wasn't one of them. Sometimes she left her phone in a drawer and forgot it existed. Still, it didn't sit right in my stomach. I tried again. Still no answer. Emma entered the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, hair sticking up like she'd wrestled a pillow and lost. Did great-grandma call? She asked softly. No, I said, keeping my voice light. Not yet. Her mouth tightened. Is she mad at me? My heart clenched. No, baby. Well, none of this is your fault. Emma nodded, trying to believe me, but shame doesn't vanish just because you tell it to. We're going to go see her, I said. Okay, we'll bring her the cocoa mix she likes. Emma's face softened slightly. Okay. We drove to Grandma Ruth's mid-morning. It was quiet, like the world itself was still recovering from Christmas. I knocked, knocked again. No answer. I called her from the porch. Still nothing. Maybe she's sleeping, Emma suggested. Maybe, I said, though my hand was already reaching for my key ring. Grandma had given me a spare key for emergencies, and her definition of emergency included, if I don't answer my phone and you get annoying. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was unnervingly silent. Not gentle, napping old person quiet. Empty quiet. I moved through the living room, calling her name. No response. Then I noticed what was missing. Her wheelchair wasn't parked by the wall where it always rested. The blanket she used each night was gone from the chair. Small bag by the door gone. My breath caught. Emma's tiny voice came from behind me. Where is she? I don't know, I said, my voice feeling alien, detached, like it belonged to someone else. I walked outside, hands shaking, and went straight to the neighbor across the hall. She opened the door in her robe, hair clipped back, wearing the exact expression people wear when they're about to tell you something you won't like. Oh, honey, she said before I could speak. Your mother was here. My stomach dropped. When? Asked. Early, she said. Morning early. I was taking out my trash. They had a car down front. Did Grandma go with them? I asked, forcing my voice to remain polite, too controlled, like I was inquiring about a package delivery. The neighbor hesitated. They had her chair. Your mother was talking fast. Your grandmother didn't look happy. Did she say where they were taking her? Asked. The neighbor shook her head. No, I didn't hear that part. I'm sorry. Of course she hadn't. People like my mother never announce where they're taking you when you have no choice in the matter. I thanked the neighbor, because apparently I'm the kind of person who says thank you while her life is collapsing around her. Then I walked back into Grandma's apartment and paused for a fraction of a second, trying to figure out how to breathe. Emma stood by the doorway, gripping the cocoa mix box as though it were a weapon. Did they? She asked. I don't know, I said. And then, because she's 11 and her mind goes in directions you can't always follow, I added immediately. She's alive. She's okay. We're going to find her. I didn't believe my own calm voice. I just needed to borrow it. Called my mom. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. Called my dad. Voicemail. I stood in the hallway outside Grandma's place, staring at my phone like glaring at it hard enough would make it behave. Emma tugged my sleeve. Maybe they took her to their house. That was the first sensible suggestion anyone had made all morning. So we drove. The entire way, I kept checking my mirrors, as if the world had suddenly become unsafe in a way I couldn't name. Emma sat quietly, eyes fixed on her lap, trying to behave so I wouldn't fall apart. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I didn't even turn off the engine normally. I just killed it and got out, knocking hard. My mother opened the door as though she had been expecting me, her face already set for battle. Where is Grandma? I asked, her eyes narrowing. Lower your voice, I said, staring at her. Where is Grandma? She's fine, my mother snapped. And you're not barging in here to upset her. I'm not here to argue, I said, my voice that cold, controlled thing it does when I'm trying not to explode in front of a child. I'm here to see my grandmother. My mother stepped into the doorway like a bouncer. After what you did. I didn't do anything, I said. Except come home to my kid sitting alone with burned food because you wouldn't let her inside. Don't start, my mother hissed. I'm not starting, I said. I'm finishing. Emma stood behind me very still. My mother glanced at her, then looked away, as if eye contact might make her feel something. Your grandmother is resting. She doesn't need your drama. Then let her tell me that, I said. Let me hear it from her. My mother pressed her lips tight. No. That single word was the moment everything changed. Not because I expected her to be reasonable, I know her too well, but because she was blocking me from even seeing Grandma. That isn't family drama. That's control. I pulled out my phone again and dialed 911. My mother's face twisted. Are you serious? Yes, I said without blinking. I'm serious. She made a sound like I was embarrassing her, which, honestly, was a welcome break from her usual hobby of embarrassing me. I told the dispatcher exactly what I knew. My grandmother was missing from her home. Her mobility equipment and belongings were gone. My mother had taken her early that morning, and my family was refusing to let me confirm she was okay or speak to her. I didn't theorize. I didn't editorialize. I just gave facts. Emma's small, cold, trusting hand slid into mine as we waited. When the officers arrived, my mother immediately switched into her "I pay taxes" voice. Oh, good, she said brightly, as though we were at a neighborhood meeting. There's been a misunderstanding. The officer didn't smile. We need to see your grandmother. My mother's face tightened. She's resting. We still need to see her, he said, same tone, neither rude nor negotiable. My mother stalled just long enough for my heart to hammer against my ribs. Then she stepped aside, as if personally oppressed. Grandma was in the back room in her wheelchair, blanket across her lap, eyes sharp. The second she saw me, something in my chest unclenched so violently it almost hurt. Relief hit first, then anger right on its heels. Emma made a small sound and moved forward before I could stop her. Grandma reached out and took her hand, as though she had been waiting for that specific proof of life. There you are, Grandma said, her voice rough. Emma nodded, tears forming. I thought you were mad, I said. Grandma's eyes flashed. I'm mad at the right people. One officer crouched down slightly. Ma'am, are you okay? Are you here because you want to be? Grandma didn't hesitate. No. My mother jumped in. She's confused. Grandma turned her head slowly. If you interrupt me again, she said, I'm adding it to the list. The officer looked at her. Do you want to leave? Yes, Grandma said. Now. My mother's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. It was like watching someone realize their favorite puppet had learned to cut its own strings. The officers didn't lecture. They didn't give a courtroom monologue. They simply made space, literally and figuratively. They made it clear Grandma could leave. And when she rolled past my mother, she didn't even glance at her. That silence spoke louder than any yelling could. I got Grandma into my car. Emma climbed in beside her without being asked, holding her hand like she was anchoring her to the planet. Grandma looked at me. Call my lawyer. I did. He agreed to see us that day. When we arrived, he didn't sugarcoat anything. He slid a folder across the desk. Here's what your family has been calling a gift, he said. The house isn't in your parents' names. It's owned by Grandma's living trust. Your parents were listed as beneficiaries, meaning they were set to receive it after Grandma dies. But while Grandma is alive, she can change the beneficiaries. My stomach sank. Apparently, they had been behaving as if everything already belonged to them. They act like they own so much, Grandma murmured. Her lawyer didn't flinch. She could also adjust how the rest of her assets were distributed. Her savings, her accounts, everything. The principle was the same. Beneficiaries could be updated. Grandma tapped the arm of her wheelchair. Good, she said. No one should be rewarded for turning a child away at the door. The lawyer asked a few simple, calm, respectful questions, just confirming that Grandma understood what she was signing and that nobody was pressuring her. Grandma answered as if she were personally insulted. The world needed proof she still had her wits. Then he printed the necessary documents. Grandma signed, witnesses signed, each page was initialed. And just like that, the names my parents assumed were permanent vanished. My name took the place of theirs. Emma's future was secured right alongside mine. Grandma wasn't merely angry, she was intentional. Throughout the whole process, Emma stayed close, silent, clutching Grandma's hand as if afraid she might be dragged away again. When it was over, Grandma looked at her lawyer and said, "I want them kept away from me now." He nodded once, already reaching for another set of papers. "We'll put that in writing and we'll begin the process to remove them from the house." Grandma's sharp gaze then fell on me. "I gave them space," she said. "And they used it to hurt a child." Emma's eyes welled up, but this time there was no shame, only relief. Grandma squeezed her fingers. "Next Christmas," she promised, "you won't be standing outside anyone's door." Fast forward to next Christmas. Emma and I are in the home my parents once claimed as theirs. Not because I wanted a trophy, but because Grandma insisted the truth be reflected in official documents. The house, worth roughly $350,000, became Grandma's home after everything unfolded. We made it fully accessible for a wheelchair. Ramps, wider doorways, grab bars, and a bedroom on the main floor. Funny how limited space can feel vast when it's not used as a tool of punishment. Grandma also had around $200,000 in savings. She changed the beneficiaries on all of it. Some went into an emergency fund for her care. The rest went exactly where she intended. A college fund for Emma and a future she wouldn't have to fight for. My parents received exactly what they deserved. Nothing. They tried calling, apologizing, blaming, reshuffling events as if that could alter the truth. I didn't respond. Emma is different now. Quieter, more composed, no longer shrinking herself to avoid rejection. And Grandma remains sharp, stubborn, and thoroughly pleased with herself. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more.